if you were a gay man and walked into some of those parts of East London, you know, well done on getting out alive in some places, because
I'm a gay man. I go to parts of East London all the time, Ian.
No, I don't dispute that. What I'm talking about, if you were on some of those marches that Rafe was just referring to, there are huge components of people within those marches that don't want to. You shouldn't even have the right to the same oxygen, let alone the right to life, because they are hugely homophobic areas within those communities. You must know that. I mean, people say, LGBT support Palestine and things like that. You must be embarrassed by that as a gay man. You must be. As a Jewish gay man, you must be embarrassed.
No, I'm not embarrassed by it. I think that it's actually, you know, and actually, I think the worst danger for any gay person in Gaza right now is being blown to smithereens by an Israeli bomb, actually.
But would you stand in the middle of somewhere in Palestine and shout out, "I'm a loud and proud gay man"?
Well, I'm not going to Palestine right now, and actually,
What's up, YouTube? Hope you guys are feeling good. Today, guys, we're back here into a new video, guys. Today, we're going to check it out. He destroyed an angry woke activist. This is going to be good. I love to check this video out with you guys. Let's get right into today's video, guys.
Failure. But actually, what I want to say also is that, you know, as we look at Rishi Sunak's premiership coming up to the next general election, he made 5 pledges, right? To halve inflation, reduce the debt, grow the economy, lower NHS waiting lists, and stop the boats. And the fact that he just focused on stopping the boats, he never even mentioned legal immigration, which is a far bigger issue for people living in the communities, shows you that he's completely out of touch with the people's needs and interests on this. He simply doesn't get public attitudes towards immigration. That's why you're seeing him only ramping up things now as we get into the short run-up to an election.
Okay, Jonathan, are you one of the people that doesn't get it? Because you're very honest, and you know we're not North Korea. We live in a democracy. We can all have different views, and that's fantastic. But you're some would say more generous to the immigrant cause than others. Rafe is simply making the point that most people don't think.
I'm unashamedly pro-migration, and actually, migration is really, you know, until very recently, migration had really gone down the list of issues that people cared about. Ironically, after Brexit, migration actually stopped being sort of a top-tier issue for people, because I think a lot of people thought that migration had been sorted, quote unquote, which is actually quite funny, given that legal migration is much higher now than it was before the referendum. And so, look, I think that migration is a good. I think the only thing that should sort of put a brake on immigration is literal capacity. Do we have the geographic space? Do we have, you know, the land? Do we have sort of public services? And obviously with migration,
you've answered your own question there, because the answer is no.
Well, no. Well, if you drive outside London, which I occasionally do as a Londoner myself, you'll see we have actually lots of space.
We've got lots of fields. We have lots of schools and doctors' surgeries and GPs.
Britain geographically is not full. Nobody would argue that Britain geographically is full. What you could have an argument about is public services, and you know, it's a very complicated argument. And actually, the whole point of immigration is that one of the main benefits of immigration is that migrants are keeping our public services afloat. And obviously, you know, when you have people that come in, obviously that's an economic.
When you say migrants,
can you add to the economy, and then that's what filters down.
I'll come back to Rafe in a second. When you say migrants are keeping our economy afloat,
well, public services, they keep our public services.
In what sort of way?
When you look at the NHS, when you look at the numbers of people from abroad that staff the NHS, you look at sort of the people. Obviously, you know that you had the fabled Polish plumber in the years after sort of Eastern European countries joined the EU, and you know people could identify with that all over the place. You know, what people had a backlash to the idea that we had free movement and that anyone could come, but actually. Most economists agree that free movement was actually incredibly beneficial to our economy. Now, Britain could have done in those days what other countries in the EU did, which is to kind of have a kind of a filtered system that there wasn't going to be complete free movement from day one. The Blair government decided not to do that. I actually think that was a good thing because you have certain.
I mean, you said
other people disagree.
You said you're pro. I don't honestly know anybody who's not. The idea of it's not really pro-migrant, not pro-migrant. Rafe, I don't know anything about your backstory. I imagine there is a migrant component to your backstory. Look at your name. I would assume there's
my mother's Polish. My father was born in Kenya.
Well, there you go. So you recognise that side of the argument.
And this is one of the things that the media always tends to, whether disingenuously or not, confuse is immigration versus mass migration. In the 1980s and 90s, we had immigration at approximately 50,000 per year, which was a very reasonable number to manage. We've had, in the last 20 years, more immigration than in the last 2,000 years combined. We had more immigration last year than in the entire decade of the 1990s. And no society can cope with such change. And unfortunately, too much of the discussion is about public services, infrastructure, GP appointments and so forth. The cultural change that we have seen in this country because of that. You know, from the old mill towns of the north to the heart of our capital city, towns and cities are unrecognizable to the generations that once called them home. And this is an issue which we're too scared to actually discuss, but we're seeing the effects of that actually on the streets of London every Saturday when you see these marches taking place, where you have a minority of people there who are, you know, old-fashioned left-wing white people, but the majority there are Muslims who hold abhorrent views for most of society. You know, there's a reason that London is now the most misogynistic, the most homophobic, and the most anti-Semitic part of the country. It's not because of the indigenous white population or recent immigrants or older immigrants. It's because of the changes that have happened under recent immigrants. You've seen an increase in acid attacks, in honour killings, arranged marriages. These are issues which people aren't brave enough to discuss, and they need to be discussed because this has been festering under the surface for so long. We've had reports out today about the rise in anti-Semitism. There's a clear reason why that's happening. This needs to be addressed. We need to be brave enough to discuss these issues because otherwise we're going to be facing a very dire future.
Jonathan, you look as if you're just about to lose the will to live after listening to what Rafe was saying there.
I just think it's a deeply depressing argument, and it's,
well, it's reality.
True, though,
it's depressing.
No, it's not true, and I think it's outrageous to attribute, sort of, you know, to the marchers who are simply marching for a ceasefire. I presume that's what you're referring to attribute a whole range of other opinions to them that they're not actually protesting about. You know, I think most people in this country are completely horrified by what's happening in Gaza right now, and they have every right to say that it's enough, and it's, you know, to say that this is somehow the result of a kind of a failed migration policy is completely
jihad
obscene.
on the streets of London.
Well, I mean, I want to see
anti-Semitic attacks on the streets
obviously,
of London.
everyone should be opposed to. Everyone should be opposed to.
But who's committing those? It's recent immigrants who've come over here. Well, let's call it. It's Islamic immigration. Okay. For example, London used to be a place where if you were a young gay man, you would flee to for sanctuary. Now it's the most homophobic place in the country. 50% of Muslims believe that homosexuality should be illegal. It's only 5% in the broader population. And most amazingly, 1/3 of young Muslims in this country believe you should be put to death if you leave the faith. These are very serious cultural dynamics that are now part of the fabric of British life.
Jonathan, do you dispute those figures as Rafe has laid them out?
There are plenty of people across the country who have views that I would disagree with. It's completely irrelevant what views people have. What matters,
it's not irrelevant.
It is irrelevant. What matters is what people actually do.
Yes.
You do not have. I'm sorry, but there are not sort of hordes of Muslim people going out committing hate crimes every week. In fact, Islamophobic incidents, which you for some reason haven't mentioned, are also on the rise, up by threefold, I believe, in the last couple of months. So I think that's also a problem. I don't think the Muslims should be sort of targeted for their faith either. So I don't think that anyone should be targeted on behalf of because of their beliefs or because of who they are.
Well,
I think
Jews
it's completely
are being targeted by Muslims and by the
Jews.
left.
Well, look, I am Jewish, and we've been targeted by a lot of people over a lot of years. I think it's always bad. Whoever and to single out.
It's bad now.
No, it's always been bad. Actually, it's completely wrong. To single out a group of people for doing this is completely outrageous.
For 200 years, Britain's been a sanctuary for the Jews.
Okay, we're going to be talking about anti-Semitism
nonsense,
and hate crimes
since the 19th century.
in the next
leaving
section.
the Russian pogroms coming over here, settling in Spitalfields.
People weren't even allowed to come. The British people, the British government didn't even. The British people didn't even want most of the Jews to come over here. Otherwise, they would have.
We can come to that in more detail in the next chat as well. Is the point, though, Jonathan, that Rafe is raising here, the overarching point, that I think often gets relegated in the immigration debate, but I consider it to be possibly the most pivotal, and that is cultural assimilation. And we don't talk about that enough. It's almost as if that's an extra point, but it's fundamental, isn't it? Cultural assimilation isn't something we should apologise for, that we should aspire to cultural assimilation. We want people to, of course, you know, again, to quote that term, we're not North Korea, you have your own beliefs, etc. But an idea that you sing from a very similar hymn sheet is pivotal to a civilised society, right?
Well, I mean, I don't exactly know what you mean by civilised society, but obviously it's important that people who come here. You know, what happens with migration is a dialogue. If you've ever been out for dinner in Britain, the likelihood is that you have engaged in some of the benefits of migration, because you're probably not going out for an English all the time. You're going for Italian food, Indian food, Chinese food, etc. And so this is just one of the ways in which
and that is great. That is great.
But migration is always an engagement. When you say assimilation, yes, it sounds great in principle. You know, and I did my degree in a lot of this stuff, and so I was often sort of thinking about this in kind of quite theoretical, philosophical terms. But obviously, when you have and migration, and you talk about assimilation, often what that means, or what some people want it to mean, is that people come here and they sort of become exactly the same. They might look different, they might come from different places, but they basically...
But that would be boring, wouldn't it? That would be boring and weird.
That's kind of been the French model of migration. And I've always thought that was a mistake, because it actually deprived so much potential richness by saying that everyone's going to become here, everyone's going to become exactly the same French people that we are. They might look different, but they're going to become French, they're going to talk the same, sort of have the same customs, etc. Because that actually denies so much diversity, and diversity is one of our key strengths.
But diversity is our greatest weakness, and every single study, there was a major meta-analysis done of all 87 sociological studies on the issue of diversity and social trust. Now, sociologists are the most left-wing element in our universities, and they were actually embarrassed by the findings of this 2007 Bowling Alone, excellent book written in America on this very topic. And what they showed is increased diversity leads to a lowering in trust, a lowering in social engagement, and on the local community level, people become more reclusive, they stay at home, and there's a general decay in society and in local buildings because of that, because no one feels that they're empowered enough to become...
What is meant by diversity in this respect? Are you talking about people's skin color?
It's ethnic diversity, and it doesn't just lead to a detraction in social trust amongst different groups. The more ethnically diverse a culture is, the more lack of trust there is even within ethnic communities. And it's been the greatest blow to diversity. You know, every week almost goes past when you'll hear a mayor or a police commissioner saying diversity is our greatest strength. We've never seen any evidence to actually show that. On the contrary, all of the sociological studies have shown it's actually our greatest dilemma, and if not our greatest weakness.
Jonathan?
I mean, I just don't know what that means. If you say that,
show some research to back up your stuff.
If you say that, well, I mean, so you can show any number. The devil can cite scripture for his purpose, Rafe. Look, if you go around London, people who live in London, who love London, know that it's an incredibly diverse city, and you sort of walk around different parts of London where different communities live. And it is a source of great pride to me and many other Londoners that we live in a city that has this diversity.
Is that through...
I'm not saying that doesn't mean... But Jonathan... It doesn't mean that there aren't sometimes problems with sort of tensions between different communities. Of course, no one is saying that everything is perfect. Of course, there are always ways in which things can be improved, in which people can sort of interact with each other better. That's not what we're talking about. The issue is whether diversity itself is a good thing, and I think it is.
Are you in danger, though, of seeing this, and I don't say this as a pejorative, through a sort of left-wing lens where you desire, and admirably so, a nice sort of utopian society where we all rub along nicely, everybody gets along nicely, whereas actually, if you were a gay man and walked into some of those parts of East London, you know, well done on getting out alive in some places, because
I'm a gay man, I go to parts of East London all the time, Ian.
No, I don't dispute that. What I'm talking about, if you were on some of those marches that Rafe was just referring to, there are huge components of people within those marches that don't want to... You shouldn't even have the right to the same oxygen, let alone the right to life, because they are hugely homophobic areas within those communities. You must know that. I mean, people say, LGBT support Palestine and things like that. You must be embarrassed by that as a gay man. You must be. As a Jewish gay man, you must be embarrassed.
No, I'm not embarrassed by it. I think that it's actually, and actually, I think the worst danger for any gay person in Gaza right now is being blown to smithereens by an Israeli bomb, actually.
But would you stand in the middle of somewhere in Palestine and shout out, "I'm a loud and proud gay man"?
Well, I'm not going to Palestine right now, and actually, I think it's a completely it's a wrong question. Look, nobody's saying that gay rights are perfect around the world. That's not the point. It doesn't mean that people should be denied. It doesn't mean that. Well, they're certainly not, and that's not just from Muslims, by the way. But no one is saying that should. Well, I'm certainly not saying that should deny people their human rights. The idea that because there are anti-gay rights, that people deserve them to be killed by a bomb. I mean, that's a completely monstrous line of argument. No, I'm sure you're not arguing that, but in that case,
I'm just asking.
I don't know what the line of question is meant to achieve. It's completely fallacious.
Well, I think it's all about...
These woke activists don't accept the truth. You see, something about them is that they like playing the victim, number one, and they don't like accepting the truth. Okay, in Britain now, is immigration good? Because whenever there's immigration, there's big diversity. Because people who are coming to your country are bringing their own culture and background to your country. You understand? So they start practicing such in the country. By practicing such, whenever they're coming with their numbers, it starts increasing. Like these woke activists right now, people who support him, like Palestine in general, like this now, or Muslims, They do not support gay. They do not like gay. They don't want gay to be around them. Or this LGBTQ people that kind of free Palestine bullshit. Palestine do not support them because it's a Muslim country. And what they are doing, Palestine do not support it. Muslim detest it. It's a taboo. Do you understand? So, the thing that this historian is saying is that having immigration is good, but the rate at which it's going in UK, in Britain in general, it's bad. Because these people are bringing in that culture and changing the normal culture in Britain. Comment down below what you think about this video. And over the interviewer already know that what the historian is saying is true. Because the interviewer himself have experienced such. Comment down below what you think about this video. Give us a thumbs up, share this video as many as you can. Subscribe to the channel, guys. I will see you guys in the next video. Make sure you stay safe.